Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Xylella seminar series. So today I'm happy to introduce you Rob Turner. He works for the European and Mediterranean Plant Protection Organization. And Rob today is going to present the contingency exercise workshop that took place in May in Tunisia. This was organized by EPPO in collaboration also with EFSA, the European Food Safety Authority, with the BeXyl project. It was a very interesting exercise in which many different NPPO from people from different countries from the Mediterranean and other countries from Africa participated. I think he will present the main outcomes and how the workshop was developed. Thank you, Rob, for giving us the opportunity to listen to you and share the information for those that could not participate in the exercise.
That's great, Blanca. Thank you very much for the introduction, and it is a pleasure to be here and give you all a summary of the work that we did, which was a very collaborative work as part of the BeXyl project as well. Here on the screen, we can see all of the participants of the simulation exercise, which was held in Tunisia in May this year. Just one slide on EPPO. I'm sure you're all aware of EPPO, but the European and Mediterranean Plant Protection Organization is one of 10 regional plant protection organizations across the world. We're an international intergovernmental organization created in 1951, and currently with 52 member countries spanning Europe, the Mediterranean basin, and Central Asian countries. We work for NPPOs and with NPPOs to deliver international cooperation, dissemination of information in plant health, plant quarantine, and plant protection products. EPPO is involved in the BeXyl project in 3 distinct work packages. Work package 2 on new strategies to improve methods for surveillance. Work package 3 on the use of thermal treatment for phytosanitary treatments. And work package 9, stakeholder engagement, dissemination, and communication. And it is with this presentation we present some of the deliverables for the work package 9 work package, specifically the contingency exercise workshop that we conducted in Tunisia. So what's the purpose of the contingency workshop? Well, the purpose was to really act to simulate the experience of a plant health emergency. In this case, it was the outbreak of Xylella fastidiosa in a fictitious country. It is also to experiment with the responses to an emergency. We'll go over this in a little bit more detail within the presentation, but it's how you would communicate in an emergency, what measures you would implement in an emergency, to test whether relevant contingency plans and guidance are adequate and provide the amount of information and instructions to be able to deal with an emergency outbreak of a pest, to test the availability and relevance of other resources. For example, some of the EPPO PM3 phytosanitary procedures, inspection guides, or the diagnostic protocols, the PM7. In addition, to provide experience in communicating key messages during an emergency outbreak. So with the participants, we broke them into groups and we gave them a number of different exercises that really tested their communication skills and how they had to deal and respond to specific inputs. I'll come to all this later. To learn why and how to develop contingency plans. It's quite important what sort of information, what level of detail should be included in contingency plans. And importantly, very importantly, the network between EPPO countries and between EPPO and NEPPO countries. The workshop was organized in collaboration with the Near East Plant Protection Organization, which is, again, one of 10 regional plant protection organizations covering North and Africa and Central Asia. The workshop organizing, as Blanca's already highlighted, the workshop was a really collaborative exercise from the very initiation and the development of the organizing committee that established all of the information, procedures, and communication, and the structure is what I'm looking for, the structure of the workshop. The organization of the workshop was organized in collaboration with FAO, Sub-Regional Office in Tunisia, FAO Regional Office in Cairo, EFSA, European Food Safety Authority, and of course, some excellent scientists from the BeXyl project itself. We established an organizing committee almost 12 months before the workshop itself to really establish the contingency planning exercise itself, but of course to deal with logistical aspects as well. NEPPO, of course, were involved in the organizing committee, and I must really thank NEPPO for all of their local logistics of organizing the venue, the scientific aspect, of course, but all of the local aspects as well, and of course the field trip exercises and the laboratory exercises that I'll show you a bit later. So it really was, to take a message of this slide, it really was a collaborative effort for the organization from the very beginning to the delivery of the workshop. In total, we had 72 experts in plant protection attending the workshop, and the experts came from 21 countries in total. We had a various number of participants from each country, between one country, for say the Czech Republic, to 22 participants from Tunisia itself. We had a really good ratio of EPPO, NEPPO member countries present, and we had an excellent gender balance as well of approximately 50-50. We had 4 EPPO, NEPPO countries. We had 10 EPPO countries and 7 NEPPO countries. What we did was when we 72 participants is a lot to work for. A lot to work with. So we broke all the participants into 6 groups of 8 to 10 participants. The rest people were the facilitators of the workshop. And we made sure that we had this balance of EPPO, NEPPO countries and gender balance as well, reflected in each individual group as well. We thought that was really important. As I've already mentioned, one of the outputs of the workshop was really getting experts talking, collaborating, making contacts, building links between different countries. And I think this worked very well within the simulation exercise, which was held over 3 days in total. We had a number of presentations at the beginning of the workshop, but also interspersed throughout the 3 days at specific times to really set the scene. Number one, to highlight the importance of collaboration to build resilience against pest outbreaks in the EPPO region, to
a me, quindi c'è il messaggio riesco ad attaccare
to specific aspects dealing with why and how to develop contingency plans. EFSA gave an excellent presentation on the scientific knowledge that is required, scientific information that is required to build a robust contingency plan and where that information can come from. And then we had experts, for example, Antonio, for example, Mariangnes, and others giving key presentations on real specific aspects of the biology, the ecology, the vectors, and the economic impacts of Xylella fastidiosa, both in the EPPO European region, I should say, but also in the NEPPO region as well. So I think we had a really good array of additional scientific information to back up the other scientific information in the documents. And I think that's really important. I think it's really important that people learn from reading, but some people also would like to hear and have oral presentations, things explained to them in more detail. So that's exactly why we had these two levels of information throughout the workshop. So contingency plans, what are we talking about? So contingency plans aim to ensure that there is a rapid and effective response to an outbreak of a pest, which has been assessed as likely to cause major economic and/or environmental impact. They can really help the organization involved in number one, being prepared, and number two, being how to address, how to undertake an eradication of a pest outbreak. And this is really important when there's more than several parties, that several organizations, several departments that need to be involved in working together in parallel to help with the eradication process. And there's need for cooperation there. Development of contingency plans and testing of contingency plans is a key activity to raise awareness among stakeholders. And in particular, here we have the EU member states, where within the regulations, as detailed in on the slide, it is a requirement that contingency plans are developed and tested against priority pests. EPPO has a PM9 standard called generic elements for contingency plans, which includes 12 essential elements that should be detailed within the contingency plan. Here we can see them listed on the right-hand side of the slide. I'm not going to read them all out, but the aim of the one of the aims of the workshop was to test the EPPO standard to see if it remains fit for purpose. It was developed in 2009, and of course, EPPO standards, they're not static in time. They might need revision, especially when new and interesting information comes to light that can improve the quality of the guidance that is detailed in the standard. So one of the jobs we actually asked each of the group to do was while they were assessing, while they were carrying out their simulation exercise, was to also look at the EPPO PM9 standard and highlight to us, does it remain fit for purpose? We'll come to the evaluation of that aspect a little bit later in the presentation. So, the simulation exercise. The purpose of the workshop was to simulate the experience of a phytosanitary emergency and to test, as I've already mentioned, if the EPPO PM9 standard was fit for purpose. But we also had a draft Tunisian contingency plan that was developed just for Xylella fastidiosa, that was developed just before the workshop started. So it was great that we also had a new contingency plan that also we asked each of the groups to test, to evaluate as well. And again, as I've already mentioned, it's important that we evaluate the availability of other resources and we really wanted each of the groups to work as a team. Each group had a facilitator that helped guide each of the groups throughout the process, to help them if they got stuck, to help them if they keep on track. But the facilitator was not there to provide all of the answers, and it was just the facilitator was there as a guide to help them move along, keep to time as well in some of the circumstances, because some of the inputs really came thick and fast. There are a number of different levels of simulation exercises that you could conduct in both challenge and realism. At the bottom left of the graphic, we have a simple coordinated drill that is both not really that realistic or that challenging. Two, at the top right, a live play exercise where it's all go, which is highly realistic and highly challenging. We kind of met in the middle. We had a tabletop exercise, a facilitated exercise. I think we made it as complex as we possibly could. And so we were kind of in the middle there of realism and challenging. And I think the feedback from the group was that it was challenging and busy enough for the participants to keep actively engaged. So the structure of the simulation exercise. So if we consider the simulation exercise to be a component of these four boxes, we have the scenario, we have the event, we have the activity, and we have an inject. The scenario is the common theme for the exercise. What, where, who, when, what is happening. For our simulation exercise, the scenario is the fictitious outbreak of Xylella fastidiosa in Surveyland. Surveyland is a fictitious country which our colleagues, our friends in EFSA developed for this particular study. The complexity of the scenario evolved in time. The scenario started with the first detection of Xylella fastidiosa in a nursery on olives. And then as the scenario developed, subsequent detections in orchards were part of the scenario. The scenario and the inputs were handed out in handouts to each group. And so they received a memo from a local inspector to highlight that Xylella fastidiosa has just been found in a nursery. We gave some images of that, and then it is up to the groups to consider how to respond to those inputs. I think it's very important to note that if the groups had all worked together and within the group and just addressed each of the input as it came, it would be a little bit difficult because the inputs came really thick and fast every 20 minutes. And so the group had to learn that they had to break up into individual groups within a group. And so they really had to assess what the expertise were there. Were there expertise in the scientific? Were there other expertise in more communication inputs? And so they really had to divide the group themselves to be able to meet the demand of the velocity of the inputs. An event occurs as a result of the scenario. So, for example, here we have Xylella suspected in a new orchard, or we have the detection of Xylella from samples submitted to the laboratories. The activity is performed by the groups to address an event. So the groups may have to consider delimiting surveys. They may have to consider the restrictions on the movement of host plants from a demarcated area. They might have to consider how to address communication campaigns or press releases. So these are all the activities that each of the group had to work on and produce an output for the inputs that they received. Then we had the injects. Inject is an occurrence that is designed to test the community contingency plan and the outbreak management team. For example, the destruction of the removal of trees. Some of and one of the inputs was from the director of the NPPO, highlighting that the trees should be destructed, and the communication was a number of different methodologies to destroy the trees from a number of different companies in survey land. But the inject was the refusal of access. So you had a landowner that's refusing access to his land for this activity to take place. And therefore, each of the groups really had to assess and evaluate how to deal with this issue, whether it's a fact of communication or whether it's a fact of using legislative powers. Communication plan. For example, another inject is that key stakeholders are disseminating incorrect information on the outbreak. And therefore, each of the groups had to devise a strategy to ensure that the correct information is being disseminated to all different stakeholders. And therefore, each group had to consider what sort of information should be disseminated. Should that information be the same as being disseminated to the general public as to scientific and internal authorities? And so they had to look at different levels of communication and different ways of communicating. So I mentioned inputs, and here we can see on the right-hand side a number of different inputs that were delivered to our group to really test their level of how they work together and how they deal with the outbreak. We had a draft press release that was written by a nursery association on the outbreak of Xylella. It was full of mistakes, deliberately. And so each group had to think about what key information really should be incorporated into a draft press release and really therefore think about communication. We had a lab report that contained a number of mixed up samples. And so the groups had to think about how they rectify this, but also what sort of inspectors with the level of expertise they should be sending to the fields to ensure that the samples that are sent to the lab are correctly labeled. We had a tweet from a nursery owner in a demarcated area highlighting that it was all fake news, and he was selling his plants on Monday morning for half price. And so this again is a level of how did the groups deal with this problem, and how did they communicate, number one, with the nursery owner and the wider public to rectify this issue. And of course, all throughout the inputs, we had emails, letters from the boss, from the director highlighting that he wanted to keep involved, he wanted to know what was going on, and importantly, he wanted information on the resources and how much this was costing, and to devise a annual but also a multi-year budget for potential ongoing work. And so we really did try within the inputs to really test all of the different aspects of dealing with a outbreak. And there's many more than what I show here. I should mention actually why I remember. The simulation exercise and the documents that we produced, if you're interested in receiving them because you may wish to adapt them and utilize them yourself, you're more than welcome. Please just email me and I will be very happy to send them on to you. You can adapt them for a different region. You can adapt them for a different pest. We were very lucky to have colleagues from EFSA who gave an afternoon session on the utilization of the repest tool and how importantly this can be used to be able to design detection surveys and delimiting surveys. They really gave us a really good run through on the scientific aspect, detailed the EFSA pest survey tool, gave us the basic concepts and gave us some key information on how to design and how to prepare a survey, and then worked us through a demonstration of a detection survey using the repest tool. I think it was really, really useful and again, really advantageous for all of the groups to have this information. We did get out of the meeting room for a day, for the second day, where we conducted a field and laboratory visit. We were really lucky that we could visit an orchard for olive, and the experts that were present gave really excellent demonstrations on how to identify symptoms, how to undertake inspection, how to undertake sampling, and how to preserve the samples for delivery to the lab. Participants had the opportunity to do some cutting, to do some preserving and some labeling. We took some of these samples to the National Plant Quarantine Laboratory, where we gained a really good overarching summary of the sample management procedures for the samples, how they prepare the samples for the molecular detection methods. And I think that it was really advantageous, really useful to do that as well. And I thank the Tunisian authorities from the National Plant Quarantine Laboratory for the time that they spent really giving us a detailed demonstration. So to conclude, some conclusions of the workshop, that this was the first collaborative simulation workshop between EPPO and NEPPO, bringing in an array of different experts from across 2 regional plant protection regions. Importantly, all groups and all individuals actively participated in the exercise. And this was highlighted in their presentations at the end of the exercise, where they really did show their interest, and with their excellent presentations. We received some excellent feedback on the draft Tunisian contingency plan and on the EPPO standard, the PM9 standard, which will be used when we consider future updates of the standard. We want to continue as well some of the work that we conducted here. And so I think it's important that we do follow up some of the work from this simulation exercise with webinars, and that can be for the EPPO PM3 standards on inspection of places of production and inspections of consignments for Xylella fastidiosa, but it could also be on the PM7 standards for standard for diagnostics. I mentioned feedback, and I mentioned at the beginning that we really did ask each of the groups to look at the Tunisian contingency plan and the EPPO PM9 standard to give us detailed feedback to how these can be strengthened, how they can be updated, how additional guidance can be incorporated into these standards and the Tunisian contingency plan, which were all gratefully received. And for the Tunisian contingency plan, it was detailed that some additional information can be incorporated on phytosanitary measures. There can be more information on the establishment of quarantine facilities and procedures, for example. And for the EPPO PM9 standard, it was highlighted that there could be more of more guidance provided on the integration of citizens and early warning systems, strengthening the guidance on international collaboration, specific recommendations for different pathways and the pathway management. So that was all interesting aspects that we will consider as we look at updating of, well, NEPPO for the Tunisian contingency plan and EPPO for the PM9 standard. The organizing committee have written a much more detailed version of my presentation in a paper, which will be published in the EPPO Bulletin. It's been edited and the paper is in press. This paper will be open access and it can be available on the EPPO Bulletin website. So that was, I think, is a very important aspect as well. And then one of my last slides is some feedback from the participants. And so as you can see, as I hope you can see, the overall feedback from the participants that it was a very useful workshop, both in the quality of presentations, materials, the relevance of the workshop, and including, of course, the logistical aspects of accommodation, workshop, venue. Well, it was a very nice venue. It was a nice hotel in Tunisia, very close to the beach. So I think the participants liked the venue. With that, this is my last slide. And of course, again, I would like to thank the organizing committee for all of the work that they did for building and delivering this simulation exercise. Of course, for BeXyl that has funded aspects of this, the workshop, and of course to our local organizers and collaborators, NEPPO and EFSA and FAO. I thank you very much.